Hey, Guoba here with a guide on Yanqing, Jing Yuan's little icy prodigy, or known in England as an East Londoner. He's a very powerful single target damage dealer with some great survivability boons if he ever hits those small freeze chances. He is very easy to build, provided you can use him right, as he gives himself some disgusting crit buffs. He may need Japad for his full potential but can still perform well without him. So today we'll be going through his stats, abilities, traces and Eidolons, and his pros and cons. Then we will discuss his best relics and light cones, and finish with his optimal rotations and team compositions. If you like these guides and want more, like and maybe consider subscribing, as I'm doing in-depth guides on every unit in the game. Anyway, let's begin. So Yanqing is a 5-star ice character and part of the standard 5-star units in the game. He follows the Hunt path, which is the path dedicated to high single target damage. At level 80, Yanqing has a base HP of 892, a very high base attack of 679 and a base defense of 412. He also has a very high base speed of 109 and a high energy cost of 140. As a Hunt unit, his taunt value is 75, equivalent to a 17% chance of being hit in a standard team before any aggro modifiers. This puts him at the 3rd lowest HP in the game, as well as one of the lowest defenses. His attack, however, is in the top 4, just under his sensei Jing Yuan. He is the 4th fastest unit in the game with his high base speed and has the highest energy cost in the game, tied with Xing. So his stats are all about offense, no questions asked. Now let's move on to his abilities, which have some unique buffs and interactions that you'll want to know about. His basic attack is Frost Thorn. It will do a standard amount of ice damage to a single enemy. This will do 30 toughness damage, regenerate 20 energy for Yanqing, as well as 1 skill point for his team. Now let's look at his talent, as that will be affected and affect his 2 other skills. One with the sword gives him buffs when Soul Steel Sync is active. We'll see how we get this buff afterwards. First of all, he is less likely to be attacked by enemies. Now this is not your traditional aggro modifier. It will affect the base aggro by minus 60% before the aggro modifier itself. Meaning his base aggro would be 30 now, and an aggro modifier of 500% from March 7th shield would only bring that up to 180. With 30 aggro thanks to his talent, he now has a 7.8% chance of being hit with no extra team aggro modifiers. The second buff is that his crit rate and crit damage will increase by 20 and 30% respectively at level 10. The third buff is that after attacking an enemy, he will have a 60% fixed chance at max level to perform a follow-up attack, which will do 50% ice damage extra of his attack to the enemy he just hit, as well as do 30 toughness damage and regenerate an extra 10 energy. This also has a 65 base chance to freeze the enemy, a low chance but sometimes it can clutch. Frozen target also takes pursued damage on their turn, equal to another 50% of his attack. Finally, when he receives damage, he will lose this Soul Steel Sync buff, and that's why he's not SS++ Omega tier. You have to play him smart. So his skill is Darting Iron Thorn, and is how he will be getting his Soul Steel Sync buff for his talent. He will deal a large amount of ice damage to a single enemy and activate Soul Steel Sync for 1 turn. Since you'll be spamming your skill, this will be up permanently until you get hit. This will do 60 toughness damage, regenerate 30 energy for Yanqing, and consume 1 skill point. His ultimate is Amidst the Raining Bliss, and has an energy cost of 140. It will first increase his crit rate by 60% at max level, and if Soul Steel Sync is active, grant him a 50% crit damage buff, all for 1 turn. It will then deal a very high amount of ice damage to a single enemy. So combined with his talent, you get an 80% crit rate and 80% crit damage buff, and I don't know about you, but 240% free crit value is pretty disgusting. This ultimate will deal 90 toughness damage and refund 5 energy. Finally, his technique is the One True Sword. It is a buffing technique, so you may stack it with other techniques. After entering battle with this technique, Yanqing will deal 30% more damage for 2 turns to enemies above half health, which is pretty likely to be the case. It is okay in Memory of Chaos, but much better in Simulated Universe, where you'll fight bosses right from the get-go. Now let's check out his traces, trace bonuses, and what to prioritize leveling on Yanqing. Icing on the Kick is his first Ascension passive. When he attacks, he will deal additional ice damage equal to 30% of his attack to any enemies with ice weakness. This is very excellent bonus damage since you'll be bringing him to ice weak enemies all the time. His second Ascension passive is Frost Favors the Brave. When Soul Steel Sync is active, his effect resistance will be increased by 20%. This actually does pretty much nothing, until you stack it with other external effect resistance bonuses. Since at a 100% base chance of enemies landing a debuff, with their innate 32% effect hit rate, you will still have a 100% chance of being debuffed even with this effect resistance. It is good early game and good to unlock for his trace bonuses though, or any low base chance enemy debuffs. His final Ascension passive is Gentle Blade. When a crit is triggered, so all the time, his speed will increase by 10% for 2 turns. This is an excellent passive and means his base speed goes to 119.9 now. His trace bonuses are an ice damage percent, incredible, attack percent, amazing, and HP percent, which is okay for if he ever gets hit. Attack percent is probably the second best bonus he can get after ice damage percent because he already buffs his own crit value by a lot, so it would be a bit saturated with it in trace bonuses. For leveling priority, his ultimate and then his talent are priority, and then his skill, and then basics do not need to be leveled. You are not playing sub DPS Yanqing. His A2 and A6 are best to grab, and then the A4 for trace bonuses. Let's now check out his Eidolons. Svelte Saber is his E1, and when he attacks a frozen enemy, he will do additional ice damage equal to 60% of his attack. Now this can be hit or miss. He has some chance to freeze, but it's quite low, so the only effective way of getting it would be through breaking toughness. In mono ice this can be pretty nice, and combined with his A2, this can result in a free 90% extra attack multiplier worth of ice damage each attack. His second is Supine Serenade. When his Soul Steel Sync is active, he will gain a 10% energy regeneration rate. In 4 skills, he now only needs to hit 1 follow-up for his ultimate rather than the normal 2. And in 3 skills, he can get his ultimate if he hits all 4 possible follow-up attacks, but that has an 18% chance of happening. So this Eidolon is okay, it's some nice quality of life, but we'll be pairing him with Jing Yuan usually. His fourth Eidolon is Searing Sting. When he is at 80% of his HP or higher, he gains 12% ice resistance penetration. This is very strong to have in a DPS kit, but it takes a while to get to, it's at E4. Zila and Dan Heng have it in their base kit, but they have conditional triggers for it. You have to play around him not being hit anyway, so this bonus is very strong when you get it, giving him around a 12% damage boost proportionally from his E3. His fifth Eidolon will enhance his ultimate and talent by 2 levels, giving him an extra 1 crit rate and 7 crit damage, 2% more chance of hitting that follow-up, and more follow-up and freeze damage, which is not bad. His final Eidolon is Swift Suit. If the buffs from his Soul Steel Sync or ultimate are in effect when an enemy is defeated, the duration of these buffs is extended by 1 turn. Now, enemy defeated does not signal that Yanqing has to defeat them. This is very strong in theory, but a bit weak in practice unless you're against enemies with summons. Also, you'll be spamming skills, so only the ultimate buff would care about being extended. Damage comparisons right now won't calculate this because they don't assume kills, but it's broken if you can get its effect, and pretty E6 worthy. So, as we see, Yanqing is a very strong single target carry. It's obvious to see why. High multipliers, self-crit rate and self-crit damage steroids, and a ton of follow-up and additional ice damage. The freeze can also come in clutch and help versus bosses, as well as any freezes from his high toughness damage. He's easy to build and fun to play and has some satisfying one-shot setups. His problems are his turns outside the big crit buff, but he still dishes out a ton of damage and still has a great amount of crit chance. This can also be solved with his signature light cone. The main problem is his Soul Steel Sync passive being lost when he takes damage, which means he will need someone like Gepard or Fire MC to take away the damage. Gepard's shields are so tanky that he won't take damage when they're up, and will keep the buff, and Fire MC can taunt the damage away. March could work, but it's a little trickier. Finally, he has some energy problems. 140 energy is a lot of energy, but it is understandable due to the buffs he gets. We will see how we can help fix this though, and no, it's not an energy rope. So what are his best relics? Well, his theoretical best is a 4-piece ice set, but only by the smallest of margins. And credit to Edison's Maths Club for sheeting this information. Since he already boosts his crit damage by a ton, the ice 4-piece bonus is kind of saturated, and 2-piece musketeer combo with 2-piece ice is pretty much the same damage. Even a 4-piece musketeer comes close, only losing 7% of its potential damage. So in the early game, prioritize just a 4-piece musketeer set, and in late game you can transition to a 2-piece combo. 4-piece if you really care. For your planar ornaments you can go what you like. Space Sealing Station should work the best, and in Inert Sal Sotto, because of how his crit rate reaches the conditional effect. The 8% can also help for any substats since you won't be running crit rate chest. Unironically, you can use Celestial Differentiator for the crit damage, though the other effect sucks unless you're doing some memes. I would recommend Spacing Station as it's calculated as the best and he doesn't self-boost his attack percent in his kit. It's also very efficient for farming too. For main stats, you want to go crit damage percent chest, attack percent boots or speed, ice damage percent orb, and attack percent rope. Crit rate chest is overcapping on crit rate. Speed boots are not that needed with his high base speed and self-speed buffs, but you can go it if you have really good subs. Finally, you never go energy regeneration rope. As I've said before in videos, just because an energy rope can reduce a rotation doesn't mean it's better. You can't just tunnel vision over energy. The attack percent on a 4-turn rotation is better than the damage without this rope in a 3-turn rotation. For subs, you want to get your crit rate to about 30% so your skill still crits enough without overcapping too much on the ultimate, and then prioritize the usual crit damage, attack percent, and speed. As for light cones, his best in slots will be between In the Night, Swordplay S5, and Sleep Like the Dead. Thanks to El Nawawi, or Ahmed, I hope I said your name right, for these light cone comparisons. Now, this doesn't account for how sleep actually works because they've said themselves it has some errors, but the gist of it is that Sleep Like the Dead is a very good light cone for him, and only outperformed by Speed Boots In the Night or Swordplay S5. The reason Sleep Like the Dead is amazing on him is because of how it works. So he is a 4-hit skill that shares 25% of the total skill damage on each hit. So if he doesn't crit on the first skill hit, he then has 75% of his skill's damage that would gain this crit rate buff. And Sleep Like the Dead will carry on the buff to the next turn, so he will gain 1.75 worth of skills with 36% added crit rate. Pretty damn insane. Swordplay is awesome for him too for the same reason. 4 hits means 4 stacks of Swordplay in 1 skill. The first skill won't be fully buffed, but the second skill will have 3 hits worth of Swordplay's maximal buff if you're hitting the same enemy. Stellar Sea is of course still a fantastic option for him though, and completely free to play. Rip Flows is also okay since you have to play around Yanqing's passive, just like you have to do for this light cone, but prioritize getting Stellar Sea for him, and the other 4-star free light cones for other units, rather than getting River Flows. For his rotation, the max you'll need to cycle his ult is 5 turns worth of skills. 4 turns if you can get 2 follow-ups, which is a 91% chance of happening. If you use Jing Yuan, you can optimize Jing Yuan for a 3-turn rotation with S5 cogs, NG rope, and Von Whack, and thus provide Yanqing with energy every 3 turns, allowing for a 3-turn rotation on Yanqing, which is very strong. So you'll want to have your Soul Steel Sync up before you ultimate for the massive gains in damage, as his ultimate takes up most of his damage in his kit. Even with your ult, using your skill before your ultimate is optimal, as you'll gain way more damage than 1 less turn of rotation. Remember, without Soul Steel, you'd miss out on 20% crit rate, 80% crit damage, and then the follow-up chance, which can make or break your next rotation. At E2, you follow the same principle, but remove 1 follow-up attack needed. A 2-skill rotation is possible with Jing Yuan and Yanqing at E2, but requires 2 follow-up attacks, and Jing Yuan cannot keep up as she can't perform 2-turn rotations. For best teammates, he will of course want Jeopard. Jeopard's shields are so chunky and have excellent uptime in his optimal relics, which is speed and energy regeneration rate. Not taking damage means Yanqing's Soul Steel Sync will be up constantly and he will be at his maximum power. Fire MC also works provided you're taunting sometimes, or if you've got great toughness damage to cancel and avoid any AoE attacks. So with Jeopard on Landau or Moment of Victory and his Trace, Yanqing will have a 3% chance of being hit. Now for supports, his best support will be Jing Yuan, as the 3-turn ultimate cycle and her hypercarry buffs are insane for him. Next is Bronya, as well as Silver Wolf. Silver Wolf provided you're bringing him into non-ice weak enemies. The resistance shred and defense shred is super strong. Another great option is Pella, a budget Silver Wolf at E4. She will have defense reduction and ice resistance reduction, as well as good toughness damage to provide freezes. For the rest of the rankings, check out the sheet in the description, it is very interesting. For his best team, you'd want to go Jeopard, Jing Yuan, Yanqing, and a flex. Jeopard shields, Jing Yuan buffs, Yanqing Shings. The flex can be a healer or a sub DPS or another support. For mono ice, you can go Jeopard, Pella, Yanqing, and Silver Wolf. This is also a very potent team, especially at E4 Pella, because of the defense and resistance reduction stacking. March can sort of take the place of Jeopard if played right. Anyway, that's all on Yanqing. If you like this guide, perhaps like and subscribe, and let me know below if you want him or have built him and how you're liking him. Thanks for watching, have a Guoba day.